Picture a cutting-edge nuclear submarine disappearing into the depths, engulfed by the sea with no hint left behind. For decades, the loss of the USS Thresher ranked as the Navy's most enduring enigma, a tragedy in the shadows and speculation. The families of the 129 crewmen who died were left to cling to little more than creased flags, cryptic official answers, and an agonizing lack of closure. It was an engineering travesty, a Cold War cover-up, and a human failing. But thanks to advances in technology, the declassifications of records, and the determination of researchers and relatives, the complete picture has finally emerged. And the truth? It's darker and more sinister than anyone ever dreamed. This is the mystery of the USS Thresher, and the horrifying reality of what actually occurred beneath the waves. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. The tale takes its beginning in the early 60s, when the Cold War was raging. Space was not the only frontier on which the United States and the Soviet Union were engaged in bitter rivalry. The seas had become battlegrounds of stealth and dominance. Nuclear submarines were the new behemoths of military might, silent, deadly, and nearly invisible. They may hide beneath the waves for months, bearing the threat of demolishing counterattacks or shadowing enemy ships. Among those steel killers, one submarine stood out as a wonder of its time, the USS Thresher. Commissioned in 1961, Thresher, SSN 593, was the first of a new class of fast-attack submarines, a ship that embodied the height of military engineering. She had a slender, streamlined hull that enabled her to dive deeper than her predecessors, AS-5W nuclear reactor that provided nearly unlimited range, and advanced sonar and weapon systems to track and destroy Soviet submarines at record speed and accuracy. The Navy marketed her as stronger, safer, and more versatile than any submarine yet. She wasn't just a tool of war, she was a symbol of American technological supremacy. But the pride and promise didn't last long. On the morning of April 10, 1963, Thresher set out on what should have been a routine deep dive test off the coast of Cape Cod. She was accompanied by the submarine rescue ship USS Skylark, which remained on the surface to monitor communications. All seemed ordinary to begin with. The submarine went down below 1,000 feet, deeper and deeper into the Atlantic. There was a radio call announcing a small malfunction. And then silence. No mayday. No signal of distress. Just vanished. The hours ticked by, and the Navy hoped it was a communications glitch, that Thresher would come back up. But hope fell apart when wreckage started surfacing, pieces of metal, insulation, and detritus clearly associated with the submarine. The reality was horrible, Thresher was lost, and all 129 men on board with her. The worst submarine disaster in American history shocked the country. The crew had 16 officers, 96 enlisted men, and 17 civilian engineers and technicians who were watching the test. These were not mere ghostly names on a list. They were dads, husbands, sons, scientists, and builders who felt that they were part of something monumental. The loss left shockwaves not just running through the Navy but running through the shipbuilding industry and the U.S. public. But even as morning spread, so did questions. How was it possible for a ship constructed to such exacting standards, one that was designed to be almost indestructible, merely disappear into the abyss? From the outset, the Navy's explanations were maddeningly sketchy. Officials hinted at a possible mechanical malfunction, such as a rupture pipe or flooding. But specifics were short, and too many records were stored behind the rubric of national security. That lack of transparency only fueled speculation. Whispers spread in military and engineering communities. Was it due to a design flaw? A disastrous oversight? Or was it the product of a systemic culture that prioritized speed and technological prestige over safety and caution? The families of the crew demanded answers. So did reporters. But the further one dug, the more the enigma seemed shrouded in silence. For decades, Thresher became a ghost tale within the Navy. Each succeeding generation of submariners came to know her name. She was a sobering reminder of the sea's mercilessness, a testament to the fact that even the finest machine can be brought low in a matter of seconds by the sheer pressures. But the specifics eluded them. Investigations indicated potential failure in silver-brazed seams in the submarine's high-pressure seawater piping system. If either of these joints burst, they would have resulted in flooding and an automatic reactor shutdown, rendering the submarine immobile. But without concrete evidence, the explanation was guesswork, and official Navy accounts were evasive, frequently heavily censored, and locked away for decades. The secrecy only ended when technology, and doggedness, started to erode the enigma. During the early 1980s, oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard, later to find the Titanic, was covertly commissioned by the U.S. Navy to find and document the wrecks of both USS Scorpion and the Thresher. Ballard's team used deep-sea submersibles and remote-operated vehicles and found Thresher roughly 220 miles east of Cape Cod, resting almost 8,400 feet beneath the surface. What they found was terrifying. The submarine had imploded from unimaginable pressure, rupturing into fragments of thousands. The violence of the destruction was so extreme that some areas were unrecognizable. The implosion, Ballard afterwards added, occurred so rapidly, within milliseconds, that the crew wouldn't have had time to endure. The harsh ocean deep, ruthless and merciless, had showed no pity. But these photographs, as terrible as they were, could not even begin to account for why Thresher had failed. The greater breakthrough came not from the ocean but from paper. In 2019, after years of litigation and unrelenting pressure from relatives and activists such as retired Captain James Bryant, the Navy started releasing hundreds of pages of previously classified documents. Hidden among these pages were technical memorandums, witness statements, and engineering reports that told a damning story. The evidence established that Thresher's weaknesses were not only known but also disregarded. The primary villain looked to be the submarine's high-pressure seawater system, and specifically the silver braze joints. Braze joints, unlike welded joints, were susceptible to cracking under intense pressure. While under construction and testing, designers found that most of the joints cracked under stress. Indeed, there were reports that more than 14% of joints tested in sister submarines were faulty. So, rather than rewriting the system, the Navy proceeded. Why? Because re-drilling the joints would have taken considerable time, and delay was not acceptable in the Cold War competition with the Soviets. Protests were heard but the ship was accepted for testing nonetheless. One of these joints probably burst during the dive, jetting seawater into a compartment. It short-circuited electrical equipment and caused a reactor scram, a nuclear reactor emergency shutdown. That process was meant to avoid a meltdown, but in a submarine, it translated to immediate loss of thrust. With no electricity, Thresher started to rapidly sink. The crew tried to blow the ballast tanks to come back up, but here as well a known weakness came into play. Compressed air systems did not have moisture separators, so water in the pipes iced up at depth. When the crew attempted to stuff air into the ballast tanks, the valves were clogged with ice. The system collapsed, leaving the submarine dead in the water. From that point, the result was no longer in doubt. She just kept sinking until the crushing Atlantic pressure surpassed the strength of her hull. At about 1,300 feet, the submarine collapsed. It was all over in seconds. The sinking of Thresher was not due to one freak incident but to a series of failures, technical design flaws, disregarded warnings, poor emergency procedures, and institutional overconfidence. All these weaknesses had been highlighted in advance. All could have been remedied. But the necessity to stay ahead technologically of the Soviet Union came at the expense of safety. The tragedy was, in effect, avoidable. In its immediate wake, the Navy held a court of inquiry. Testimony was gathered, technical documentation examined, and acoustic information from the Navy's SOSUS network examined. The final report indicated likely mechanical failure but did not address many of the outstanding questions. The inquiry did not mention the missed warnings regarding brazed joints or the absence of redundancy in vital systems. For years, it was widely thought that the investigation's mandate was narrowly defined, more to cover up for the Navy and submarine program than to reveal truth. Nuclear subs, after all, were the gem of American defense expenditure. To acknowledge systemic problems threatened to cut off funding and public support. The families were offered only ambiguous justifications, words such as instant descent or catastrophic failure, little comforting or explanatory. Closure was yet to be found. But the tragedy did bring about change. Behind the scenes, in the secrecy of the Cold War era, the Navy initiated the most comprehensive submarine safety program in its history, the SubSafe program. An acronym for submarine safety, SubSafe completely revamped the design, construction, testing, and maintenance of submarines. Each vital system, pipes, valves, welds, joints, had to be traceable, tested, and certified to perform under conditions of stress. Record keeping became de rigueur. Inspection